Hello, everyone. It is the Bodacious Cowboy. Welcome to the Storytelling Chronicles. It is Monday, November 6th. I have a great show today. My guest is Nate Johnson, founder, CEO of GLCS Inc. Let's go.
Life, lessons, logistics. Let's go.
Hello again, everyone. Bodacious Cowboy, the Storytelling Chronicles, Logistics, Life, and Lesson Learned. Today we have a great show and a continuance on the topic of broker-carrier tensions, what's causing it, and what we can do collectively to make it all go away. So today's guest is Nate Johnson, again, founder and CEO of GLCS Inc. Let's bring him in. Nate, how are you?
Doing well, Jeff. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. For those who do not know who Nate is, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I've been in transportation logistics about 28 years. Started on the carrier side. Spent quite a few years running and operating a variety of different carriers. Owned my own fleet for quite some time. I've run dry-van carriers. All of those had components of brokerages as well. Ran a refrigerated carrier for a while, and in 2011, I went to TMW Systems and ran their consultancy, or what was called transportation consulting, and eventually we relabeled that strategic services. I was with TMW for several years and started GLCS in 2016. GLCS is a management and technology consultancy. We also do managed services, all for transportation logistics providers. That's effectively, we can become an IT department or augment an IT department. And then we also have an integrations and development team as well. We do a lot of technology integrations between ELDs and imaging providers and visibility platforms like a Project 44 or FourKites, or kind of any solutions that are out there. We work with well over 200 organizations on a monthly basis, and have right around 100,000 trucks on our integrations platform.
Wow, that's definitely a hell of a lot of trucks. That's pretty good. Now, you're just domestic, right? Or do you do a little bit of international or no?
North America.
Okay, awesome. So I appreciate it again for you joining the show today. As you've known, you've probably seen over the last couple of weeks, I had a few guests. Last week was Kevin Combs from Green Screens AI. We were talking about the Carrier Broker Summit and the Carrier Broker tensions. You and I met in Tampa not so long ago. We hit it off. We had many different discussions. What are your thoughts about the carrier broker tensions? What's causing it, and what do you think can be done to help correct it?
Well, this isn't anything new.
No.
I think it's been around since I've been in the industry. I think it gets a little more press these days because of market tensions as well. And then also social media. It's a lot easier to get a soapbox today than what it used to be. So that's one thing is, people can be a lot louder today than what they used to be. I think tools, there's a lot more tools out there today that allow auditing of carriers, right, wrong, or indifferent. So that's created some tensions around, today, it used to be, I'm just not using you anymore as a broker. Now you get freight guards and carrier 411, whatever, thrown around to lock up carriers because of their performance issues and et cetera, et cetera. And I think that gets a lot of attention thrown out there. So there's a lot of tools and a lot of other things. And I think in the purest form, those tools are great.
Yeah.
But now they're being leveraged as these negative impacts. There's a lot of things on both sides of the industry. I'm mostly a asset-based guy. I certainly have moved my share of non-asset loads over the years, but I like to, in this conversation, I like to take the carrier side.
Right.
But I definitely see it from the broker's side as well. So, I had this almost exact conversation on Wednesday. Speaking, it kind of evolved out of double brokering into tensions between brokers and carriers. So interested to see where this conversation really leads.
Yeah. You mentioned about the tools and Carrier 411. I mean, there's just a plethora of them that vet these carriers. But when it really comes down to, Nate, is that carriers are responsible for their own actions and their own worst enemies. They create this kind of stuff that enables, such as the Carrier 911 or Shure or any other ones out there, the ability to knock on their door and tell them who they aren't and basically lock them out of the industry. But it's their fault. Isn't it their fault when they have CSA scores that are poor or do poor PMs and just mismanagement of information that's being shared?
There's some of that's out there. I mean, certainly CSA scores are very factual. So if you have poor safety scores, then you have poor safety scores. I think when it gets into the subjective side of these things, which are you operated poor, so I'm putting a freight guard out there, and you've been around a long time where there's solutions out there right now that create, and I'll look it up here in a minute. I was tinkering with it last night, but the reasons that trucks aren't getting delivered, hours of service has made this very complex for drivers to make on-time service. If they have poor traffic, if they get sick, if they have a bad morning, how many times do you not sleep well? They're operating a 80,000-pound truck. They're effectively operating a shotgun.
Oh, definitely.
All day. And if they're not feeling safe, if something's wrong, and they're unable to get to their delivery on time for whatever particular reason, that is not a reason to put a freight guard on them. But many times, and I've been studying this for the last 12 to 18 months, a lot of different broker groups, a lot of different owner operator groups. So I think to your point, yeah, these tools are in their purest form, very good and needed, and that's what they were built for. Is that? But they create tension when they're not used the proper way, and when they get used as a verb instead of a noun. That's where I think they become a problem. So. I think the carriers also, especially when you're looking at a single owner operator, and then you're looking at a broker who's potentially been in the industry, whether it's a single broker or a massive company, and you look at and I don't want to create this sort of tension on the podcast, but you look at the education difference between those typical people. I'm not saying that a driver is uneducated, but
no.
Typically speaking, at a larger brokerage, you're having someone who potentially has a college education, is thinking a different mindset, who has a different thought process than that driver. That driver is looking at all the things that they have, that owner operator, that single owner operator is looking at all the things that he has to deal with to move that truck down the road. And that broker has GP on his mind, and I have 10 loads today to move, and this is what I'm worried about. They are not worried about the same things. So once that load is booked and the rate con is sent over, the driver is not worried about the same things that the broker is worried about. Essentially, picking up and delivering the load on time are probably the only pieces that they're worried about from there on out. So equivalently, I think where you have the same issue, let's escalate that to a larger fleet, where maybe I have 75 trucks.
Right.
I book a broker load and I have to make a decision. I've booked a spot market load. We kind of got on this topic at an earlier time. I don't think we finished our conversation, but so I booked a spot market load, and maybe I have 10 trucks in Chicago and my heavy lane is LA, for example. And now I have to make a decision. A driver's called in sick today, and I have to make a decision to deliver 10 loads in LA. I've spotted them or whatever at my yard in LA, and I need to make a decision. I have 9 customer loads and 1 spot market load to deliver today. I can deliver 9 of them. Which one's going to sit? Not my customer loads. I can guarantee you that spot market load is going to sit. So now that being said, if I had the relationships that you and I have had lots of conversations about, developing the relationships with the brokers or the carriers or the customers, those type of answers are different. Then you're probably not going to have that. It's not that easy of an answer when you have to make those type of decisions. So in the case that you are a larger fleet and you're making a decision of hey, I can't deliver your load today, whether they're going to put the freight guard on you or not, once again, it may be answered as a verb. The carrier should be honest, which I think you end up having that issue in our industry. And that's been around since.
Oh my God.
Yeah, the turbo blew up, or the dog ate my bill of lading, or whatever. Aliens. The delivery, if they're honest, that's fine. But I think you end up having these conversations with certain brokers that create tension there around those sort of scenarios, and at least that's what I see on various forums. So
a few things that you brought up that just caught me, not by surprise, but definitely wanted to question. You talk about insomnia, having a bad day or whatever, that's what HOS rules and regs were pretty much created, where you're on the clock for 14 hours, behind the wheel for 11, and then having those 3 hours for whatever, if you're working on the dock, and then you have your 10-hour, downtime, and then you have, 36-hour reset as well that's built in. So I look at controllables. There's things that can be controlled if you're a good dispatcher and you've got a good handle on your drivers and that they're managed well. There's a thing called the act of God, which you have no control over, nor do I. It's those exceptions to the rules that are allowed. But sometimes shippers or even brokers don't understand those exceptions or don't want to acknowledge they exist, if you will, because profits before service kind of deal with, unfortunately, a lot of them look at. I come from a shipper's point of view, and when you talked about the carriers and you're having 10 loads that need to be delivered in LA and guy calls out sick. Well, those are the what if scenarios, and I'm a big picture kind of person, so when I was running a fleet at Ford Motor Company, those things definitely came to fruition. The thing is that are you prepared to dive in and have that recovery in place in case those things came up. That's with the scheduling or whatever you need to do, because it's almost like, what's more important? It really comes down there. What's more important? Do you have to steal from Peter, Paul, and Mary in order to take care of this really big client? Somebody has to lose. What are you going to do? How are you going to strategically manage that to service the customer, keep them happy, as well as the others? You mentioned about the spot market. It's like, well, the hell with them. I'm going to take care of my dedicated ones before I even hit that, which I definitely understand. But the bottom line is that whatever a broker and carrier decide to do affects the shipper. The shipper is the one that starts everything, and it's the one that pretty much takes the impact from what's happening. And it comes from a lack of communication. Sometimes in a lot of situations, I don't know if you'll agree or disagree, and it's fine, but on the shipper side, if you're communicating how your operation works, and you give it to the broker, but the broker doesn't want to tell the carrier it's a drop and hook until after the fact. When he gets there, all of a sudden it's a drop and hook. They don't want to share that because, again, profit before service. And sometimes they lie a little bit in order to get a carrier on board. At least they got that covered. Because what are you going to do if they're driving, deadheading 50, 75 miles to get to that? Are you going to say, to hell with that, and then go find another load? Most of them are going to say, okay, I'll do it this time. I'm going to sit, I'm going to take a tonneau. I'm going to do whatever I need. But that's where the disparity has, and where those conversations are way out here when they need to be here, and you really have to be on the same page. Would you agree on that?
So I agree on a couple. Let me start with one thing. So you had brought up, and then I'll answer that last point.
Sure.
That last point. So, when you talk about the contingency plans of if something doesn't happen right.
Yeah.
So when you're a smaller carrier, you have less options for contingency, and your contingencies cost you money, and you have less money to work with. The bigger you get, the more options you have to deal with those things. And the large fleets deal with their market plans. So as let's say you're working Chicago, you might have 100 trucks in Chicago today. You have 150 loads in Chicago, and whatever you can't cover is going to logistics.
Right.
So, or inversely, you're calling CH to cover whatever trucks that you need, and you have a deal with CH, and you don't necessarily worry too much about your deal, but you have you're just dealing with overflow, or you're pushing the guys to the next day because your balance is not right. But you're looking days out at some of these balance, and you have an army of people in an office that are dealing with that. So it's just not comparative to a small fleet that has virtually no one in an office and no options. So, that's the two. So I agree with you. It's great to have contingencies, but the smaller you get, the less contingencies you have, or those options that you have as a contingency are just too expensive to explore.
Or the broker, though, right? Now, if that's asset where you're using an OP, owner operator on that, that's one thing. But if you're going to the broker and you want to try to build a good relationship with him or her, you would think that they have a contingency plan and would have carriers. I hate the word in hand, but everybody uses it. In that area, in case something goes wrong, you would have your support in a small geographical area where you've got carriers in around there. And now you have carriers on the outside coming into that area for that specific load, right? Because you're trying to create continuous moves. You know that the carriers are coming in, right. You're going to reload to get them out. Guy falls ill halfway through getting in there, right? Now you should have a pool of carriers that's around that, because the last thing that a shipper wants to hear is, sorry, but, my driver fell ill, we're not going to be able to pick it up today. That's the last thing the shipper wants to hear. He doesn't care about that kind of stuff. The most important thing that he cares about, whether or not his shipment's going to get picked up and be delivered on time in order to fulfill his customers' needs, So there's kind of a disconnect there where a lot of them don't think of that. So when I'm looking at what ifs, I'm looking at a large fleet, and I'm looking at the small mom and pop operations, that you should be prepared and have a plan B, whether or not you're using any one of those parties. And it could be anywhere, I mean, let's use Ford Motor Company. And when you're on a schedule and you have to pick them up, whether it's VOR stuff, vehicle off the road that has to move, you're going to have a contingency plan in it. No matter which way you look at it, somebody's going to fill that void and get in there to pick that critical shipment up. There's no two ways about it. I've seen it. So yes, there are contingency plans, and I think a big failure between the tensions between carrier and brokers and shippers is that lack of communication and what you're going to do if shit hits the fan.
Right. No, agreed. And going to your second point, and it kind of wraps into what you were just saying, communication and trust. I think that's the big piece that's missing. It's always been the case between. How do you deal with the tension? You develop a relationship, you open communication lines, and you develop trust. And at the Broker Carrier Summit, I think everyone in the room was another level. That I was actually surprised at how many people were new.
Yeah.
New to the industry, or within 2 years or less. Trey had everybody stand up, and based on and frankly, there was very few people with our 20 years plus. I don't think we even got that far, but there was a lot of people that were 2 years or less experience, and a lot of people that were brand new and just breaking into the experience or breaking into the industry. So, but the trust.
Good for those people that showed up, that wanted to gain that knowledge and hear from other folks of the industry. If you remember correctly, at the reception night when everybody came in, it looked like people were at different opposite ends of the room. And then as the night went on and people started having a few cocktails, all of a sudden you started seeing brokers talking to carriers, carriers talking to brokers. They started bouncing from, it was like speed logistics, like speed dating.
Yeah, I agree.
It was really fun, and that's how you and I hit it off, and all the rest. And we had great conversations. And these folks you're talking about with the 2 and 4 year, under their belt, they started going up to these other people and, asking these pertinent questions that made a hell of a lot of sense, because I was listening, to what was going on. I know you were too.
Right.
And we jumped in and we started talking to people and interacting with them. And at the end of the conference, the biggest takeaway was like, wow, everybody was like, I can't wait until I see you the next time. But it wasn't that way when it first started. That's
no. Yeah, there was everyone was a little tentative. Everybody was a little standoffish. And I think the next time, I know a few of us will be, let's jump in this pool right away. I don't know how many there will be, but I'll be running in with some sort of crazy shirt on. And I should have had my Jordans over here.
I'm never going to do that. You know that. No.
But yeah, I've got a whole costume rigging up. I'm actually taking it to F3 next week. But,
oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know how that goes.
Yeah, I'll do that. No, it was great seeing that, and just seeing people start to develop some relationships and building this organization that Dan and Robert and I know he hates that,
Troy.
Dan and Robert and Troy have put together. I always have to pause when I call Bain Robert, but anyway, seeing this organization that they've kind of launched and wanting to be more of it. So it will be more of a part of it. And, I'm excited to see what more I can be a part of it and more GLCS can help out. It's
I'm in there too. Absolutely.
I know you are. And that's obviously what you've dedicated your podcast to here. And I appreciate that. And it's something where I look at it as, it's something we can give back to the industry on. We can help out. There's not a lot of, we have a lot of knowledge as an organization, as GLCS as an organization. we have a massive amount of knowledge. We've worked with 900 different companies, be it brokerages, shippers, and fleets. So we've been in companies like UPS, like down through a 50 truck organization, and brokerages that are billions of dollars a year down to 10-person organizations. And we dissect their businesses and help them do business in a more streamlined way, and then add technology to it. So I look at this as just an opportunity. If you're a startup or a company that doesn't really have their tech established well, or doesn't have relationships established well. I mean, everyone that works at GLCS has done this before, that has sat in the chair, and there's so many other people in the Broker Carrier Summit that has sat in the chair. That most of them are operating companies. What was it, a 45% breakdown of carriers, 40% of brokers, and then 15% of other companies.
Yeah, it was like almost a nice even split there.
Oh, it's perfect. And trying to keep it to that spread is going to be interesting, because obviously there's more of a buzz, but I think that you couldn't have asked for a better spread there. But I know we're pushing it amongst our customer base, and keeping it to that mid-size to small size organization too, and keeping the large companies, if they do come, that's wonderful, but don't bring 40 people. So come and help us lead through it, and bring your experience and your opinions, but don't bring an army when you do. So
no, but and what was really critical about the show and the events and the topics that were discussed were the breakout sessions that they had in the separate rooms, and what they were discussing, and that they all alternated it on different days, so that everybody, sometimes when you go to events, it's just a one and done, and nobody really gets to, not everyone gets to see it. But the way our event is set up, Alternate Dave's has the same agenda, so that everybody who wanted to see it has the opportunity to see it and hear it and understand it, and then likewise be able to converse like you and I are doing right now, one-on-one, because what happens in the room goes outside, and they have the one-on-one and follow-up questions and all of that, which is great. You don't see that at a lot of events.
No, you don't see them at many, or sometimes you'll have some sort of round table that goes day to day to day, but other events that are happening are one and dones. So yeah, I did like that. I got to go to the majority of the events that I had to miss one, I think, but outside of that, I got to sit through the majority of them. I thought there was a lot of great engagement. Oh, yeah. So, that's only going to get better as everyone learns what's the right topics, how many topics need to be brought up, and how large is this event going to get. You and Kevin talked on your last podcast about his event, and how they started one way, and then the next day they just kind of opened it up entirely. They just said, let's just see what happens when we do that, and guide the whole discussion. And so evolving and learning as you do that. And I was in one event or one session where there was a lot of open discussion, and I spend most of my time there listening. I just listen to everybody. I like to study just what everybody's talking about, and hear that. I'm always looking for opportunities, and not from people, but I like to solve problems. So when I hear everybody talking about issue or something like that, then I'm going to dive in. And it's when I speak, it's usually because I actually have a specific point I want to make in a forum like that. So
you and I both.
Yeah, I think I only heard you get up once or twice in the larger group. So, but yeah, that it was a great forum for that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what do you think, if you look at the whole event as a whole, what was your biggest takeaway, Nate?
Ultimately, I think it's the potential. Um, you know, there's a million things that I loved about it, but the energy and the potential of it when you walked away. I have not. I just came out of a conference the week before, 2 weeks before that. It's my largest conference for the year. It's our GLCS's most active conference of the year. My activity that I was doing at the broker carrier conference was getting more interest than that conference. The energy, the interest, the people who were hitting me that were customers outs that were not there. I had customers show up and say hi to me that weren't even at the event, that were in the Tampa area. So they came to the cocktail hour that we had on the rooftop. So they were just interested in checking it out. So the next one that we have, I think, is going to be
Massive.
a whole nother level, and it's going to be interesting. And I think that it gives us a platform to do some interesting things on. And what Dan, Troy, and Bain plan to do with that, is TBD. But I think there's a lot that can be done with that, and completely open to helping them move forward with it. So I think that's my largest takeaway from it, and what I saw, what I was most excited about was that.
Yeah,
What was yours?
you know what? It almost similar. I think just the engagement and seeing two wide gap entities come closer together with a better mutual understanding how each other works, and not just that, but the friendships that were built and the partnerships that were built that weren't there when they attended. They left with everybody was trying to figure out what the broker carrier summit was what all about, and what would they leave with. And I think they left, just from what I heard, I'm sure you heard too, was a lot of knowledge. I've learned a lot of things. I learned things that I wouldn't have thought of, and now I'm built this partnership or with this friendship now that moving forward we can help each other out because we understand each other a hell of a lot better than what we did before we even came to this event. And that for me is so important because, like you said, this hasn't just bloomed over the last year or so. This has been going on for myself well over 3 decades. It's always been that bickering. He said, she said, shipper did this, and they were always on their own planet, miles and miles away. But I think we're getting closer on Nate, because we're right here. And this next event that we're having in April, the 22nd and 24th, I think it's going to be, to your point, more laser focus, more topic specifics from what everybody was talking about. And you're going to see even more things to talk about on that agenda than what we've seen in the past. And I got a funny feeling. I told Dan this too. I said, I think you're going to have to get a larger room for this next one, because I'm serious. The first one in Indy, as you know, was 75. Yep. The second one was
225.
225. I want to quad that. I want over 1,000 people, because I feel strong about it. I know you do too, that the more people that come and interact with each other, whether you're brokers or carriers or even some shippers, you're going to learn a hell of a lot.
Yeah, infrastructure is difficult when you start getting into 1,000-person group. So that's that. As much as I want to see that, it's a little daunting to think that you'd do that and not be prepared. So it's almost one of those things that, as long as you know what you're walking into far ahead of time, that's fine. Because
Well,
you
you better get prepared.
right.
That's all I'm going to say because I
I-
get a funny feeling that we're going to hit over 1,000.
I think that's awesome, and we'll figure it out. There's a lot of people that want to help with this, so I think
Yes.
that you just look at who was there this time, and there if we all pool some resources together and figure out how to get it done, we can make that happen. So
We're going to. That's true. So, Nate, we're coming to the end of the show. Tell everybody how they can reach out to you and your company.
Sure. It's my email is njohnson, JOHNSON @glcs.net, and it's www.glcs.net. Feel free to reach out there. Look me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active. And keep an eye out for our podcast. We just hired a podcast manager, so we'll
Nice.
be. Yeah, I've been trying to get one going for a couple months. I started, and I just realized I'm never going to get this going without. I don't have a lot of free time, so if I hire somebody to do it and help me drive it forward, which is the name of the podcast, Driving Forward, help me drive it forward, then we'll get it going. So
I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see the first episode. I'm sure it's going to be good.
Well, there's one technically out there already. It's just me yammering on for about 15 minutes, but it was more over me testing the technology. But I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully have it out there. Anytime you want me back on, I'm happy. I've got a whole list of things I can continue talking on about broker.
We'll make it happen. We'll definitely make it happen. And, we talked about the summit. Let me just bring it up, talk a little bit about it. We have the Carrier Broker Summit happening in Kansas City, Missouri on April 22nd through the 24th, 2024. It's an event that you should not miss. You heard Nate and I talk a little bit about it. It's something that if you are a carrier or a broker, you should attend. A lot of knowledge was taken away from that. Be a voice, be someone who needs to be heard. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to see you and meet you there. So go to their website. You can go online to the Broker Carrier Summit, Kansas City. Check it out, follow it, register. They are working on it. Like Nate said, a lot of TBD to be created, but they are working on it every day, almost, if not weekly, because it's going to be a huge event. So check it out. And Nate, man, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm sure we're going to talk soon. I guarantee it. And you have a great weekend.
Absolutely. You too. We'll catch you later.
All right. Take care. Have it. Another logistics life and lesson learned. Until next time.